Hello again, and welcome to Foreplay Radio Sex Therapy. I'm your host, certified sex therapist Laurie Watson, author of Wanting Sex Again, and blogger at Psychology Today and WebMD. And I have with me Dr. Adam Mathews, my co-host, who's a couples therapist, psychotherapist, and president of NCAMFT. Foreplay is dedicated to helping couples keep it hot. Each episode, we cover an aspect of sex that impacts your sex life and something that you can relate to. So if you find our discussions helpful, please give us a review on iTunes or Stitcher. We would love it if you would tell a friend about us. You can find us also on the web at foreplayrst.com. And if you have a comment or a topic that you'd like us to talk about, we'd love to hear from you. Please send them to us at info@foreplayrst.com. Thanks for listening. Now on to today's topic. Hey.
Hey, Laurie.
How are you?
Back at it again. I'm pretty good.
How was your weekend?
Oh, my goodness. It was awful. We went to see The Greatest Showman. Have you seen The Greatest Showman yet?
No, what is that?
It's a new musical about P.T. Barnum.
Oh,
and
fun.
my girls have been listening to the music over and over and over again. And
that would drive me crazy.
Yeah, it's good music, fortunately. It's good, but
circuses scare me.
They've been putting on shows all weekend.
Oh, that
my
is
kids,
so precious.
My kids love to put on shows, so they practice them, and but they're always just spontaneous improv shows. But my youngest daughter is very animated, and so she lip syncs to all these songs, and there's a lot of fist clutching and emoting, and that happens. But then as soon as we notice her, we can't notice her. I don't know if you notice this with your kids, but she's
you don't want to make her self-conscious.
Yeah, she doesn't want to. As soon as she sees us watching her, then everything changes. Mm-hmm. So she wants to do it in private. Mm-hmm. But we tell her then maybe don't do it in the living room where everybody is. So anyway, that was literally all of our weekend was watching The Greatest Showman and then emotive performance. How was yours?
It was good. We were in the mountains with friends, and that was lovely. Yeah. It was not as much snow there actually as down here.
Yeah.
But it was nice.
That's one of the underrated regions. Was not expecting the mountains to be as nice when we moved to North Carolina, but it is one of our favorite places. If you haven't visited the Appalachian Mountains in North Carolina, you should.
Smoky Mountains.
The Smoky Mountains are great.
Well, you're right. The mountains in North Carolina, I guess, but seeing the range, right, of in the distance, all the different colors on the hills, it's just incredible.
Yeah, it's great. Have y'all driven the Blue Ridge Parkway yet?
Oh, yeah. Multiple times.
Oh, it's our favorite.
It's fantastic.
We're in a convertible. Fall. Blue Ridge Parkway. Blue Ridge Parkway.
Okay, this is a fantasy. Okay, let's get on with this. Okay. We're going to talk about dating after divorce today and sex after divorce. Somebody asked us to talk about dating a younger man, and I'm not sure we'll catch all of that here, but maybe we can, talk about some of it. When do you think people should start dating again? What's your policy on that?
I don't know that there's a set answer. I think it's really dependent on the person. But I think that there's a sense that I get that it should be sometime when you have begun to process what has happened to you. We talked recently in a podcast about affair being a trauma. I think divorce is a trauma as well.
Huge trauma.
And so when you haven't begun to process what has happened to you and what has happened to your relationship and what has happened to your family, I think then it's too soon. And so each person goes through that differently. Right. And
such a great answer.
And so you have to be able to figure that out. Well, thank you.
Yeah. There are conferences and stuff on helping people get over this. And sometimes they say, or seminars, and they say, you should not start dating for 6 months or a year. And it's a very set period of time. But I agree with you that people go through this differently. Sometimes they've been in a marriage for many, many years, and they've already sort of withdrawn and processed while they were still married, and they really are ready to date once the divorce comes and is final, or once they're separated.
I think they really have to kind of examine their motivations for dating again. Right? If your motivation is coming from a place of reacting to fear of being alone, or your ex-partner has started dating, and so you're trying to prove that you're past it, or prove to yourself or to others that you're over it, or you're reacting to anger or anything like that,
probably not going to be successful.
It's not going to be successful.
Forming another relationship.
I mean, that's the kind of the definition of rebound relationship, right? I mean, and it's you're trying to get over what has happened to you through the relationship, which doesn't end up well for anybody.
Yeah, but I think there's something about health in terms of our desire to be with another.
Yes.
I mean, that to me is a really positive force.
Yeah. You mean
attachment.
as an
I mean, it's the desire to be with somebody is a positive human force. It's the greatest force, I think, in us, the desire to be attached to somebody. So, I don't dissuade people from dating if they want to start, if they feel ready to.
No, it's not going to be a disaster, right? It's not going to.
No, I mean, it's a date.
It's a date, yeah. And that is, I think, even wanting to be there may be an indication that you are ready. Wanting that desire to be in a relationship is one indication that you might be ready to begin to date again, right? Right.
So it's an individual time frame. I think that when you start dating, one of the big problems is this overcoming being rejected goods. Right? Or overcoming the stigma of, I have to tell people I'm divorced, and the sense of failure. I hear a lot of people talking about that.
Well, the fear is that you're going to be judged for that failed relationship, right? And so I hear a lot of people talking about when they're starting to date again, when do I tell the other person that I'm divorced? When do I disclose that information?
It's on the app,
hard.
Right?
Yeah,
it's on the app. I mean, eHarmony, don't they require that?
Well, sure, but doesn't mean you have to give it. It doesn't mean you have to put your you can't lie about that information. But yeah, I mean, I think that concept of yourself, right, and the value that you're placing on yourself becomes a question mark and something that you're suddenly unsure about, right?
But I do think that even though I'm pro-marriage and very supportive, and I think most every marriage can be healed. There are some marriages that need to end. There are some that are toxic, where a partner is toxic, or there are some that, are problematic. And so I really think it does need to end. And I think that people need to process that to get over their shame about it so that they can feel free, this doesn't make me a failure.
That's right. There were mistakes that were probably made even in relationships that maybe could have been salvaged, but you weren't able to do that. There were mistakes made, but that doesn't define who you are or your character either. It doesn't mean that you're not worthy enough to have a good relationship with somebody.
And I think if they're processing it and they know why the marriage ended and why it wasn't maybe a good marriage, that's really the important part in order to get ready for the next relationship.
Yeah. And I think that leads into something else. To begin to have a healthy another relationship, you have to recognize that you're going to have baggage that you're going to bring from the divorce into the next relationship. And knowing what that baggage is, I think we're just so blind to this sometimes. Is we're blind to our own stuff. Self-awareness is hard, right? And so I hear a lot of people that say, "Well, I'm not going to treat my partner the same way that I treated my previous partner, or I'm not going to project onto them." And we almost always do that. We almost always project onto them, and that's not a bad thing. But we need to at least try to be aware of how we're doing that.
And I think that's a better position, saying I'm not going to treat my partner the way I treated my last partner. Than I'm just not going to pick the same partner. Right? Because then they're not really aware of how they contributed to the dynamic.
That's right.
That's more problematic.
Yeah.
I had a bad picker. It's like, maybe. Or maybe you saw early warning signs that you ignored because you're passive. Without really understanding your contribution, even if it's, oh my gosh, I saw this craziness early and I should have gotten out. I mean, a lot of times they need to see that they're too passive.
Yeah. And I think that whatever your contribution is to it, it's hard to separate that from blame, right? It's hard to separate, this was my contribution to what happened in our relationship, so that means that I'm fully responsible for why the relationship broke up and didn't make it, as opposed to just being aware and saying, okay, these are the things that I need to improve in myself. That's a different, right?
I would say if you're dating somebody who has been divorced, it's a big red flag if they don't take responsibility for some part of the marital dissolution, right? I mean, they need to take responsibility for it. If they're a blamer and they're just saying, well, she was just crazy, or, he was just a nut, or this, that, and the other, and they don't really, first of all, I mean, that's a a conversation that doesn't happen on a date one.
Right.
You know?
Absolutely.
It's after you've been together for some period of time that you would volunteer that information. But I think it's a decent question. Can you tell me about, why you divorced, right?
Or even maybe asking, can you tell me about your contribution to like what did you think was that you need to do differently next time too? If you're at a place where your relationship is strong enough for you to ask that type of question.
Yeah.
I think that's important.
Definitely. So I think that dating after divorce, one thing, and we're going to talk about sex when we come back from the break, but is sort of developing an evaluation formula. Like, how do I say this person meets my list?
Yeah.
What is my list? I think really character counts. One thing that maybe if you married young or, even coming out of a long-term marriage, the sense is attractiveness wears thin. Surface things wear thin when you're in the daily grind with somebody. So maybe they have wealth or maybe they have a beach house or, whatever. And it's like, that's just not enough. You have to look at their commitments and how they have held to their commitments to evaluate. I think that's one of the most important things. So when you develop your list, think about more than they're cute.
And that list is important.
They're hot.
Right? It's like I encourage people literally make a list, write the things down.
I think so too.
That you're wanting to look for, and then also
because that can guide us in the moment of in love, crazy, hot sex stuff,
and also who you want. You make a list of who you want them to be, the other person to be, but I think you also make a list of who you want to be in a relationship.
Oh, I like that. That is great, especially coming out of a divorce.
Yeah, absolutely. Like what type of person?
What do I need to be?
Yeah, because then like if you're not being that in the relationship is probably not right for you. If you want to be a grounded, emotionally unreactive person in a relationship, and then you find that you are freaking out when they don't call you back, or your anxiety goes up when they have a weekend away with and don't invite you to do that, then that's an indication that the relationship might not you might not be ready, or you might not be in a place in a relationship that is good for you. You want them to bring out your best self and who you want to be, right?
So we want to be securely attached, and we really want to look for somebody who is securely attached.
That's right.
Somebody who has good boundaries, who calls back when they say they're going to call back, that kind of thing. Okay, let's come back at the break and talk about sex after divorce. So, Adam, we're going to do a new thing. We are going to offer a link to Patreon on Foreplay Radio Sex Therapy, which is foreplayrst.com, for people who are really interested in helping us develop deeper, more interesting podcasts, and also offer resources to them.
Yeah, Patreon is a platform where you can directly support things that you love. We know that several of you have been real supportive of us, and we hope you would consider being financially supportive as well.
Right, because we're running practices and families, and we need time really to do more, something like a webinar. We'd like to do some worksheets for you.
We really want to expand the resources that we can be able to provide to you as our listeners, dive deeper into the questions you have, offer more practical steps for you to have the best possible relationship.
So we're looking for some patrons. We appreciate already the love, the emails that you send. All of that is great. So if you love listening to us, you can find out how to support us by going to our website, foreplayrst.com. Thank you so much for considering that. We appreciate it.
Wanting sex again. How to rediscover desire and heal a sexless marriage by certified sex therapist Laurie Watson.
Each chapter is designed to fix one of the problems that cause low libido, from early marriage through the childbearing years, even all the way through menopause. I've also had men read it and tell me that for them it was the most hopeful thing they read about resolving sexual problems.
Look for Wanting Sex Again on Amazon.com. You can also talk to Laurie Watson for therapy in person or via Skype.
I offer couples counseling and sex therapy, and I think about both aspects of the relationship, emotional intimacy and sexual technique, and that combination together helps marriages be happy.
Improve your sex and improve your relationship with Awakening Center for Couples and Intimacy. Find out more at awakenloveandsex.com. Awaken what's possible.
Hi, I'm Dr. Adam Mathews, and I want to welcome you to Mathews Counseling. At Mathews Counseling, we believe it is our job to come alongside you in whatever difficult challenges of life you are in and help you rediscover hope and to find the strength that you have to face those challenges. We believe in people, specifically that no two people are alike and therefore they need solutions that are unique to them. We strive to create a safe and comfortable place for you to explore who you want to be and identify the obstacles standing in your way. Oftentimes, the first step toward finding help is the hardest, but it can also be the bravest. At MathewsCounseling.net, we strive to help make the first step easy. There you will find our blog with some great resources from our therapist. You'll also find a link to our client portal where you can schedule directly with our therapist at your convenience. We offer free 30-minute consultations either in person or over the phone, so the first step is at no cost to you. Give us a call at 919-587-8018, or again, find us online at MathewsCounseling.net. We look forward to working with you. Hey, Laurie.
Hey. So I think that sex after divorce, as I've been thinking about this, is... the biggest thing I hear from people is this sense of vulnerability, like, oh my gosh, I got to get naked with somebody new after all these years. That's a big one.
Yeah, the anxiety about that really goes up, right? Mm-hmm. Especially if they've been in a relationship for a long time.
Right,
That just continues to go up. And
I think also fear of performance. Am I going to be any good at all? Out in this new marketplace, having somebody evaluate me again for the first time, that's just, people are really scared to death.
Oh, for sure.
Oh, and it is such a scary thing.
Right.
So vulnerable, to either be evaluated for your physical appearance or for your sexual performance. And a lot of people who are dating, maybe it's been a decade. And things have changed.
Yeah. I think this might be a question for you, because I think evaluating when you're ready to date is one evaluation. Mm-hmm. Evaluating when you're ready to have sex again is a whole nother evaluation, right?
It is.
So how do you think that somebody makes that judgment call?
Well, I think they have to decide why they want to have sex. Is sex about a moment, pleasure, or is sex about an evaluation, about a commitment? Is sex... what is the sex about? And so that is part of it. Do they want to have just a season of sexual connection without commitment? First of all, I think that there is a bit of a gender difference in this. I still think that women, once they have sex, think that it's a commitment. So if you're going out there thinking, okay, the evening led to sex, and so that means he really, really likes me, and he's going to want to date me, get a grip.
Okay.
It does not mean that.
I like when Blunt Laurie comes out. When Blunt Laurie comes out, look out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so get a grip on yourself.
Right.
Okay.
Sex these days does not mean commitment.
Okay.
In the single world, right? It often does mean an expression of love within a commitment and a way people feel love as their primary love language. But in the dating world, it could just mean pleasure for the moment.
Yeah.
Oh, and use a condom.
Yeah.
And demand the use of a condom. Really, really, really. I mean, I just don't think people should be having sex until they have that STD conversation and until they know the person well enough to believe that they would be telling the truth.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll get off that.
Safe sex. Safe sex, everybody.
Safe sex. Absolutely. Okay. So,
I think one of the things that you're talking about is, especially if somebody has been in a relationship for a long time, if dating was happening, dating or sex, if it's been a while since you've been out there, understanding what people are currently doing right now, right? Mm-hmm. And being able to do two things: to enter that world understanding what the expectations are and what how people are going about dating and sex in the current environment, right?
Mm-hmm. Which is, I think, different than maybe 10 years ago, 20 years ago, certainly. So if you're divorced and it's been a couple of decades, you're in for a wild ride.
Yeah, but you have to understand that, but then you also have to understand what are your non-negotiables, right? Mm-hmm. With sex and with dating, right?
Yes.
So you may have to learn that the majority of people now meet each other through dating apps.
Yeah.
Right? Like
Yeah.
that is the majority of how dating happens these days, and where people meet, right? But you may have some boundaries that you may have to compromise your desire to meet somebody face to face first before you initiate contact with them. And that may be okay with you, but having sex with them on the first, second, or third date may not be okay with you, right? And so you kind of have to learn where those boundaries are for you, where those non-negotiables are for you.
That's standard. I mean, so many people I talk to who are dating again are having sex for second and third date easily.
Right.
Easily.
But if they're doing that because they think that's what it's expected and that's how they're going to go about dating or finding somebody, then
or that they're going to get something out of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
They would be very disappointed. I also think you need to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because if you're really just there for a hookup or something, be honest with that person because they may think differently about it. I did have this patient, a male patient who I saw after divorce, and he would say to me, I'm out with a woman and she seems a little too crazy to be with, but yeah, she's offering it up, so why not? Why would I not? She's attractive. I want to have sex. That makes sense. And then he said, over time, so many of these women would call back in 2 days screaming at him like, I had sex with you. Why didn't you call me back? He's like, well, it was mutual consent and it was a good time, but I didn't like you well enough to call you back, which, of course, he never really directly said. But he was curious about this constant, rage after it. And so eventually he decided, I'm going to rule out the crazy. I'm going to rule out whether or not I want to be with the person, whether or not there's a future of just dating, not if I want to be with them forever, but, if I want to continue dating, and I'm going to hold off a little bit on sex for that, which really made sense, I think, to him over time because he got so tired of that rage reaction.
Yeah. I had a client as well who post-divorce was trying to restore the relationship status quo that he knew through sex, right? And so that became the means to say, I'm okay. Like now I have somebody that's committed with me. We're in a stable relationship in part because we're having sex, and that means I'm okay. And that became a source of frustration when those relationships didn't work out. And he was okay when he was in a relationship and having sex with somebody, and was not okay when he wasn't. Which is really like it just creates this kind of up and down emotional roller coaster. That makes it really hard to evaluate the relationship as well, right?
Yeah, and I mean, this is a hard season because sex is stabilizing. Sex does make us feel good, and so it's natural to want to have sex. It's just hard to put it all together with maybe what you want out of a relationship. And some people don't want another relationship. They just want consecutive sexual partners or whatever, and we're not here to judge that. We're here to help couples who want to stay together and are committed, but we understand, there's a lot of differences out there.
Yeah, but I think that for those people that are wanting another relationship after they've divorced, being able to judge that and not just pursue that because that means they're okay. I just see that a lot. I think of using their relationship status to judge whether they are okay in life. Right. And so that gets cloudy. And then on top of which, sex kind of can at times confuse that, right? Because you can mistake good sex for a stable relationship.
Right.
Right.
I mean,
and a relationship that's going to last.
This is a hard one. And I think people always ask me, how do you evaluate whether that person is going to be a good sexual partner forever?
Yeah. How do you judge? How do you judge that?
Yeah, and I think that, first of all, you have to be committed to the fact that sex is work, right? Having a great sexual partnership for life is a ton of work. Maybe having great sex in the beginning is a good beginning, but I see lots and lots of couples who had great sex in the beginning who have their sexual life fall apart. So it's not necessarily that's it. And I also see people who maybe didn't start quite as hot, who learn how to build it and eventually have loving, great sex. So, it's hard, but it's not a perfect sign. Great sex in the beginning. I would say there's rule outs. If you're not attracted to the person, don't go on with it. I mean, at this stage, if you really know you're not attracted to them, or if you just feel lukewarm, that's crazy to continue to pursue that. Because I do think that this is a stage for decisions to make the wisest decision that you can. And so that's a rule out.
Yeah, I mean, tell me what you think about this, but I think in general, a lot of people need to go slower. As a general rule of thumb, going slow is better than going too fast, right?
Sure.
And I think there's a rush sometimes to either move into a relationship or move into a sexual relationship, especially post-divorce, because you're just wanting something that feels normal to you a lot of times, because the divorce shakes everything up.
Right.
It changes your routines. It changes your obviously changes your living situation. Sometimes you have to move. Sometimes you get into different routines with kids. Friend groups change. Like everything changes, right?
That changes a lot.
And so it feels like you want a sense of normalcy, and sometimes relationships seem to provide that. But the stats don't lie, is that the divorce rates for second, third, and fourth marriages go way up, right? They climb with each successive marriage. And so moving into a relationship too soon is much more dangerous than and likely to fail than it is just to be able to go slow and to move more deliberately and more intentionally than maybe feels natural to you. Would you agree with that, or do you think that's
well,
too
certainly
cautious?
I would agree with that, because my bias is toward long-term relationship. And I think our podcast bias is toward that. So we want to help people get to that. But once they are in relationship and dating and sexual, what about that, and what are signs to look for? And I think that, a selfish lover, somebody who doesn't reciprocate, somebody who you've told what you like and sort of ignores that and is only in it for themselves, that to me is either ignorance or selfishness. And I just think, you really need to evaluate that early. I would say the number one thing sexually and in relationship is people show you who they are. They show you who they are right up front.
And trust that, yeah.
And, I mean, they'll fill in the details later, but if you have a really bad feeling about somebody, or you notice something, they yell at the waiter, or they, treat you badly in bed, think about that. Really think hard about that. I don't care how attractive they are. I don't care how wealthy they are. I don't care what you want to fantasize that they're going to be. Forget about it.
Yeah,
okay.
Absolutely. That's
okay,
good.
Dating
Good
and sex after divorce. We could probably talk and write a book about that, because there is so much here. But thanks for listening to Foreplay Radio Sex Therapy with your sex therapist, Laurie Watson, and couples therapist, Dr. Adam Mathews. Hey, help us stay on top here at Foreplay. We'd love it if you would subscribe and share it with your friends. And please take 1 sec and rate and review us. Thanks so much.